Okay, so we've got everything in order. Let's kick it off. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. We're going to go in present mode. Okay, well, let's get rolling. First of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend this webinar. So I'm going to go get things started with the introductions and a background summary about Resilient Titusville. And just so everyone knows, this meeting is recorded, so if you need to come back and watch it later, that'll be published after this meeting's over. But this is our first public engagement meeting associated with the Vulnerability Assessment Project, which our consultants will get into more detail later, and then we'll get into answering any questions that you may have. All right. So quick Q&A feature. Let me drop in the chat. This is kind of how we're going to go about collecting questions. If you have any through this forms, I'll be able to see it and read it off at the end of the meeting. But if you need to submit a question while we're talking, we'll just save time to answer that later. And I'm going to start first. Hi, I'm Lily. I am the Sustainability Program Coordinator for the City of Titusville. And our consultants are also here with us. You guys want to introduce yourself? Maybe start with Kathleen, Mark.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Kathy. I am the Consulting Project Manager with Geosyntech, and my background is I'm a senior planner, and this is probably, oh my goodness, with Mark, this is probably our 5th or 6th vulnerability assessment just in the last year, and we are really excited to work with the city and the community in preparing this assessment.
Yep, thanks. And my name is Mark Ellard. I'm a senior engineer with Geosyntech, working alongside Kathy. My background's more on the engineering side and flood management, and very happy to help out Kathy this morning.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And I'm going to start with jumping into the background a bit of the City of Titusville in collaboration with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the FDEP, as well as other partner organizations, have been actively advancing resilience initiatives throughout various projects and grants over the past couple of years that we're collectively calling Resilient Titusville. These collective efforts are part of the Resilient Titusville aim to strengthen the city's capacity to respond to short-term shocks like hurricanes and floods, as well as long-term stressors such as pollution and sea level rise. The majority of the work that kicked off for Resilient Titusville, as you can see, kind of occurred between 2018 and 2019 when the city updated its comprehensive plan. Mostly to address flood risks. And then in 2019, it published its first Resilient Titusville report. That includes 129 pages covering everything from hazard-specific vulnerabilities and strategies on how to adapt, prepare, recover, and educate the public on resiliency. And you can actually find more information about that on our website at titusville.com, as well as a story map, and I'll send a link to that as well. But then in 2022 and 2023, the city underwent a major push to launch an outreach, education, and training initiative. This program worked to engage with local residents and city staff, just covering all about Resilient Titusville. And you can also find more information and things that went on during that time. You could see a picture of the staff training and then some tabling events that staff went out to interact with residents. We also have a YouTube video as well, kind of overviewing those efforts. And during all of this time, we were launching several, with the help of other departments within the city, we were working on stormwater plans, as well as water quality improvement projects, one of which are the baffle boxes. And you can find several scattered throughout the city, but one of the unique ones is actually at Sandpoint Park. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a demonstration site where you can actually look into the baffle box, see what it's all about, read about them, and how they help improve water quality. It's pretty neat. There's a picture of it there. But there's been a lot of water quality improvement projects that the city's undergone over the years. And another related activity to vulnerability is the low impact development, or LID, incentives that the community development team actually implemented. And it's the way that the city offers to developers who choose to take on best management practices for low impact development, like building out vegetated swales or permeable pavement, which you can see a picture of there in the background, allows water to seep through. These are all incentives that they can exchange for either expedited site plans or flexible parking and things like that. And we also have more information about that on our website, which I can link to all the attendees as well. But all of that brings us to today. The Vulnerability Assessment Project was made possible by an FDEP grant, and it is the next step in an associated activity within Resilient Titusville's scope. You can see a short timeline of that here, as well as kind of covers all of the background events that I just mentioned, and then what this assessment does to move us forward. And I'll let the consultants get more into that later. But before we move on to that, I wanted to test our polling ability to get a feel for which resilient topics are more important to our attendees here with us today. So bear with me as I attempt to launch our first poll. Hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
Great. So which of these are most important to you? Resilience topics related to you: outreach, education, storm surge, sea level rise, development in the 100-year FEMA flood zone, nuance high tide flooding, combined hazard zone, which is storm surge plus sea level rise, water quality, and then other. So I actually got it as well. I'm gonna check as many as you want that you find important. It looks like we're getting some results. Can you guys see the results as well?
No, you'll have to share those with us, Lily.
Okay. Maybe. Don't know how to do that.
Or you can just verbalize, whatever is easiest.
Yeah.
I am curious. I am curious to know what's important to the participants.
Right now, I'm looking at 20% outreach and education, 10% in storm surge, 10% in the 100-year flood zone, and 20 in water quality, other, and combined hazard zones. So a bit of a spread, pretty even.
It is. It is. It means we have diverse interests, which is great and good for us because it's a multi-pronged approach to the project and trying to resolve these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That was a fun experiment. See how the polls work.
Well, you
as
did
well.
well. You did well. We appreciate the participants for giving us some feedback already. That helps us as we continue down the path on the project. Okay, next slide, Lily,
Yes.
and I'll take it away.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm Kathy. I'm with Geo, and what I wanted to do is just take a few minutes to walk everyone through the purpose and the requirements of the assessment. And as Lily conveyed, this is a grant-funded project by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and it is actually prescribed in statute what we have to do and how we do it. And the big focus is this first bullet: critical assets, community and regional critical assets We have to assess them for what they will be vulnerable to and for flooding for the next 50 years. And the 50 years is new as of last year. So what DEP is asking the communities to do is to really assess the design life of their critical assets. And we'll talk more about what those are. So another purpose is once we take a look at these assets, we need to prioritize them for either adapting to the changing climate or mitigating them. And as part of that too, we will take a look at either the geographic areas and or the assets for the prioritization. And that will be reflected in an adaptation plan that we'll talk about in a little bit. And one of the most important concepts to this too is to position the city for additional funding. As Lily showed you, the city has made great progress to date receiving funds for studies, and this will set the city up for further success. And then one final thing that's kind of under the radar, but with the completion of the assessment, it will actually help the city with their community rating through FEMA's community rating system. It'll help them gather more points, and hopefully with more points, it will pass along some flood insurance savings to property owners. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the study must include all municipal assets that are owned or maintained by the grant applicant, which in this case is the city of Titusville. What this means is if the city has, say, wastewater or water supply lines that are beyond the city limits, but they maintain them, we need to take that into consideration while we assess them. And so on this slide, you'll see the 4 main categories of critical assets that are specified. So you have the first, which are transportation and evacuation routes. And of course, we immediately think highways, but this could also mean rail, and actually marinas fit into this category. And we know that the city has a municipal marina. Second class is critical infrastructure, and we went ahead and just put some footnotes there as to what that conveys. And military installations are considered critical infrastructure. I know that we are adjacent to some installations, so we will keep that in mind, even though we do not have to directly address them as part of the assessment. Third class is critical community and emergency facilities. Again, top of mind, hospitals, affordable housing, any social centers, things like that. And then the fourth bullet, the natural, cultural, historical resources. Indian River Lagoon, very important, as well as shorelines and parks and so forth. Okay, next slide. So we talked about the assets. Now, what kind of data are we required to inventory and assess? And again, prior slide, regional and critical assets, topographic data, as well as flood-related data. And so the different types of flooding, oops, Lily, we lost you. There we go. Thank you. So we have a bullet list of the flood data we're going to be collecting: rainfall, storm surge, tidal, sea level rise, and also land use and soil. Okay, next slide. We have 2 primary analyses. The first one is going to be an exposure analysis. So that flooding data that I mentioned, we are going to take that data and look at flooding for 3 different planning horizons: current year, which is 2025, as well as the years 2050 and 2080. So we take a look at the different flooding that's caused by storm surge, rainfall, and what is called compound flooding, which is a combination of the storm surge and the rainfall. Okay, next. And once we have that flooding data, then we take that and evaluate the impact on all the assets that we were just talking about. So we're going to have several scenarios, and you can see that in the bullet. We're going to have the scenarios for storm surge, rainfall, and compound for 3 different periods. And what we will do is after we take a look at that and analyze it, we will provide the city a preliminary list of prioritized assets and or geographic focus areas for potential mitigation and adaptation strategies and projects. Okay, next. All right, so you've heard me talking for a few minutes. We would love for you to take a look at another quick poll and tell us of the assets, which ones are the most important for you. How's it looking, Lily? What kind of feedback are you getting?
I'm seeing critical infrastructure at the top, followed by critical community and emergency facilities, natural, cultural, and historical resources, and then transportation and evacuation last. But those are only...
That is surprising. That is surprising. Usually
half
transportation
right now.
is like number 1. Right, right. Good feedback, everyone. Okay, Mark?
We're still getting a few more, and
okay.
It's changing as I'm talking.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so emergency facilities has just popped to the top. And then critical infrastructure and natural resources, and then followed by evacuation at the last.
Okay, thank you all. This is really helpful.
All right. Did that close the...
Yes.
Okay. We can move forward.
All right. So again, this is Mark Ellard with Geosyntech. Give you some additional information on where things will be going. So all the things that Kathy mentioned, all those elements that go into the vulnerability assessment, what we'll be doing is providing for the city's use a final report. This report will encapsulate all this information. It'll explain the methodology and the results and the conclusions, and provide a lot of maps illustrating where the assets are located and where these flooding impacts that we've identified, are. So really a couple take-home things of this final report. One is that it's a final comprehensive list of critical and regionally significant assets that are impacted by flooding. Again, as we talked about before, it's really focused on city assets or city maintained assets. However, because flooding doesn't stop at jurisdictional lines, there's a lot of, say, county or even state DOT roads, for example, other things that are within the city limits or in close proximity. And even though the study will focus on the city assets, there'll be information on how those facilities are impacted as well that may be useful information to others as well. Now, specific to the city, we'll be looking at putting together a prioritized list of assets or areas, really, that they can focus on. In essence, it's a laundry list of to-do things to improve, reduce flooding, or improve resiliency of different structures or assets. And that'll go in perceived in importance order so that the county has a roadmap, the city has a roadmap moving forward to what's the priority, what's to do, first, second, third, or fourth, or at least what are the top areas to progress on in priority order. Now, all this stuff will be conveniently put in a report, but all the background data, particularly all the flood mapping and asset information, will also be provided to the city to be able to use as a resource as well. Next slide. Now, in addition to the encapsulating all that information, the additional part of the scope is the adaptation plan. And this is taking those areas that were identified of impacts from flooding, those different assets, those things that were identified as a priority action for the city to move forward on, and start to identify and kind of materialize and conceptualize what are some projects or things to do to address those. So part of it is simply identify projects, provide some conceptualization, just initial ideas really to the degree of which they can address the flooding impacts or reduce flooding impacts, or provide more resilient structures. And then enough to detail to put some preliminary costs of what it may take to start implementing these projects. By preliminary cost, kind of round numbers, so the city can know, kind of get an idea of how to start budgeting in future years these efforts to make the assets more resilient, whichever ones that impacted. Now, this may be anything from improving drainage and stormwater drainage to relieve flooding. It could be addressing some streets or roadways that maybe are potentially low and may need to be raised, or it could be improvements to the utilities, water and wastewater systems, to make them less susceptible to flooding, for example. All those types of things may be considered. And one last little footnote here is similar to what Kathy referred to as, another side benefit or additional benefit of this project, is that it helps the city with their community rating service scoring and helping in that regard. This information will also be coordinated with the Brevard County Local Mitigation Strategy. It's the group that works cohesively throughout the county, the different cities and municipalities in the county, to help keep things resilient, right? And identify and manage different strategies to help recover from those storms or other disasters, or just generally to keep things on a road to better sustainability with regard to flooding. So next. So overall schedule for the project is shown on this slide, and this gives you an idea what the next steps are. Now, this current project, the vulnerability assessment, we kicked off in this past December. So we're a couple months into it. We kicked it off, and then one of our first initial points here is this public meeting here in February, to really get the word out, kind of educate you all that are listening and the public generally what's going on, and then what types of input may be very helpful to us during this process, which we'll talk about in a minute. All this time we have been starting to acquire all the background information and data needed to do the analysis that we need to do. So we hope to have all that in hand and compiled and organized by the April timeframe. Do the exposure analysis and sensitivity analysis, which is looking at the assets, looking at potential flood impacts. I'm in the time frame. We're wrapping that up towards the fall, September 25. When we have that information pulled together and more or less finalized, that's another point where we'll come back and share the results with the public and also the city council. So that'll be another opportunity to see actually what has come out of this vulnerability assessment and how it may impact different areas of the city. And again, hear from you, the public, on questions or concerns or things related to that. Now, that final report that I talked about, after getting the input from the public, from the city council, from the city, compiling it up by the end of 2025, about December. There will be, after the first of the year, scheduled another public presentation, city council presentation, and then the couple follow-on tasks towards the end, as I mentioned, coordinating with the local mitigation strategy group, and then also that adaptation plan, with things wrapping up overall for the project about this time next year, March of 26. Next. So another quick poll. These have been fairly successful so far. This one has a little bit of background to it. It's asking please rank the following resiliency themes, and you can see some definitions there on the screen of how to characterize these type of things. So, Lily, I'll let you take over the poll management.
Yeah, it should be live now. It's collecting responses as we're talking. As of right now, Adapt and Protect is right up there with prepare and recover. Nope. Adapt and protect just took the lead. Feel like a sports announcer.
It's a little bit of
And
a
coming
race,
in-
isn't it, with some of these?
Yeah, it's like a race. Coming in close third is mobilize and educate, and retreat is the last one. So
Well, that falls in line, then that's great then that we have an adaptation plan because that seems to be the top theme. Okay. Again, really good insight and we appreciate that.
yeah, it looks like adapt and protect is sticking to the top out of all of the responses I've received.
Okay, good.
Can you see my presentation
Yep.
again?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep, it's did
So
you want to share? Yeah.
yes, I can take over. Sorry, when my screen is fluttering, I was trying to pull this up. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Titusville.com website. I wanted to direct anyone who wants to kind of follow along with this process, this project. There is under community development, Resilient Titusville, all of the projects that I sort of overviewed, that timeline there. If you want to see the 2019 Resilient Titusville report, you can also stay up to date with the upcoming events. That's this one now. And then also you can submit an area on the map about where flooding is, so you can keep us, add to the data points for us. I do want to show this story map as well. If you have any ideas so these tabs are all for the past sort of things that we've worked on with Resilient Titusville. This open public comment is new. If you want to come in, take the survey. Anytime we're looking for public input, they'll be under here. Just click on this, or you can add additional comments, sort of put in your ideas, ask questions, and we can see that instantly. I'll take this off. Try to find the slide again. All right, so now is the questions. Oh, another thing I was trying to pull up was the background. If you have any questions relating, immediate questions now you want to ask, or if not, submit a comment. That works too. You can drop the link in the chat as well.
So yes, please, Mark, Lily, and I are on standby to answer any questions that you may have. And so just click on the link in the chat. It will go to Lily and she can present the questions for us.
There we go. Let's see if that works.
And while we're waiting, I think Lily, you mentioned just a reminder that this recording of this will be posted on the city's website, correct?
That is correct, yes. And I'll probably put it on that story map that I pulled up, and it'll be on the Resilient Titusville website that I also showed briefly.
Well, good. Yeah. So if those of you are listening, if you know folks that couldn't make it to listen in here live, please encourage them to look that up on the website later if they're interested.
Are we off the
Yeah.
hook, Lily? Are there no questions?
I don't see any. There's one that was testing to see if questions are coming through, which I did receive, and then one that looked like it was blank. Maybe someone forgot to write it out. Give a minute. Oh, Okay, I did have someone say they weren't able to participate in the polls. But if you can make it to this form and you want to ask a question, this is definitely a good time. And if not to, like I said, the comments in the story map is a good place to ask us questions as well. Oh, I got a bunch. How can the city implement natural barriers to flooding?
Okay, I'll take a first stab at that and then have Mark finish. So natural barriers, nature-based solutions, those are options that were previously identified in the 2019 Resilient Titusville study as concepts that are advocated, and we will also be including those as adaptation strategies in this current project.
Yeah, I'll just add to that that barriers is one option from an engineering standpoint. Sometimes the simplest approach is to create a barrier that keeps the flooding out. Right. There's some challenges with that. Like for example, one thinks of seawalls. Seawalls are very effective depending on how high they are. If they're higher than the flood level, then obviously that works pretty good. But to be successful, they have to encompass the entire municipality, which is a very challenge to build based on the availability of both city maintained property versus private property, et cetera. So those can be a solution, but often not the solution. Not the only solution. So but then those are considered on a spot area, like for example along the river. Other barriers such as maybe flood-prone properties, there could be the possibilities of providing that to help properties. But just keep in mind, if you build walls and you build barriers to keep flooding out, you also need to address the water that happens inside those barriers and make sure it has a way to get out. For example, the city all drains to the Indian River Lagoon, so you have to be careful when we do put up barriers to keep flooding out, that we also have a way to get what happens, all the rainfall and excess runoff that happens within those barriers, a mechanism to get out and drain where it normally does. So definitely, as Kathy mentioned, part of the solution of the kind of suite of things that we can look at as far as resilient strategies.
So all great answers. I haven't received any further questions as you are answering the natural barriers to flooding. So I would encourage anyone who is curious to check out, and I'll just pop it back up here, the Resilient Titusville story map, which you can get to and see all the data that was compiled from previous studies and how we're hoping to use this to move forward and come up with some good solutions as well, like you were saying. I'm not getting any more questions, so I guess with that, do we want to move? I'll go to the next one.
Yep, go to the final slide, and just that this is for those that are attending. If you would like to also have that option, you can email Lily and myself directly. And know that when you post comments through the story map, they are real time and Lily gets those. So they're just not lost in cyberspace. But do feel free to reach out to us. As Mark conveyed, our process is going to occur over the next year, and we are here to work with you and help the city. And we really appreciate you taking time out of your day as well to spend your lunch hour with us.
And I will just add to that all comments that are received by Lily and or us, they will be compiled as part of this project and they will become public information. So just keep that in mind. when
Oh,
you
good
are
point.
sending in your comment.
Good point.
Yeah. I did, I don't want to hold anyone here too long, but I did receive two more pretty good questions if we wanted to try and swing at
Sure.
those before we
Yeah.
wrap up. One of them is actually about pertaining to flooding. So rather than continuing to add rocks and walls to our shoreline, could the city place the wave attenuation devices along its entire shoreline to eliminate erosion? I think these are solution-oriented questions. Another one I can try and answer too about low impact. One of them was asking how low impact development helps. It is brand new solution to the city, and so we're very excited to be rolling it out as more and more developers seek interest in this area, showing off that we prioritize low impact development as an initiative. Sends a strong signal that if you're coming here to develop, do so mindfully. And we have taken, a couple developers have also taken that up. That picture that I showed on LID was Culver's, actually, down the street. So I wanted to circle back and answer that one. We're super glad that they did permeable pavers and helps with the water control and flooding as well. Sorry, I answered two questions in one. I went back and answered the question.
Lily, I will just elaborate. That is a really good thought and concept also on the natural attenuation devices. And what we can do is, of course, identify that again as a strategy for implementation. And what the city is hoping to do once we complete the adaptation plan, that they can seek more funding to actually assess and analyze some of the recommendations and strategies. And that could be a next step. So we could identify the devices as a strategy, and then when the city has more funding, actually study that, because I believe the question was, could they be used for the entire shoreline?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. And with further analysis, the city could actually determine that, or best uses or places. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that these are really good thoughts and ideas that you're sharing that we can capture and that the city can further assess and potentially implement.
Absolutely, and there's a couple are already installed too, so it makes it for good studying as well. I got another one as you were asking. In the consultant's opinion, can a large stormwater holding facility be constructed within the large wetlands on the west side of the city? So another solution-oriented question.
So I will start that one first, and I'm going to have Mark, our engineer. Anything is on the table as far as ideas and concepts that will help with flooding. What we need to do first and foremost is understand the critical assets and how they're going to be prioritized. And if they're prioritized for that part of the city, perhaps. We also want to look at not just regional large scale, but also to Lily's point about the LID, there could be little pocket parks, rain gardens, smaller incremental solutions that when all joined together as what Mark calls a treatment drain, it could help with the water quality and the flooding together. And I will let Mark complete my thought process on that from the engineering perspective.
Yeah, I think that, and that's a good question. And a couple things there. I'll just elaborate on what Kathy mentioned is, yeah, there's all ideas are on the table, and the successful adaptation plan will be one that identifies potentially regional solutions in addition to local solutions or spot solutions, intersection, solutions that may be worked. Maybe a lot of them, a lot of small things that work together to do a lot of good, or potentially some big things. specific to the question about the wetlands in the western part of the city, have to be careful. Generally, with the water management districts, it's not permittable to just take a wetland and turn it into a stormwater pond. So, for example, however, wetlands can be important parts of the overall stormwater and flood management of a system. You know, the wetlands have been here managing flood long before, you know, man came and started building things. So there's ways to kind of work around that or potentially use natural systems such as wetlands as part of the solution as well. But certainly there's the opportunity to look at both large scale and small scale things in combinations as the overall solutions.
I think it's great that we captured these questions too. I'm noticing a general trend being very already jumping for the solution to see if will this work and will this strategy work. So I think these will be great to explore while the vulnerability assessment is underway. So thank you everybody for submitting your questions. And with that, I might actually close the chat. Sorry to circle back around. There was a bunch that came in last minute as we were closing out. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. And we hope that you will be here again for the next public engagement. So just stay tuned and check for the recording post as well.
Thanks, Lily.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, thank you, everyone.